Welcome back to Newsday. Thanks for staying tuned. Elsewhere on the bulletin, we brought you a series of reports covering the nationwide congresses of the All Progressives Congress. Well, Tuesday's state congress were conducted in preparation for the zonal congresses and the national convention, which is slated for March 12th and 16th, respectively, of this year. APC chieftain Cletus Obun joins us now to review the just state of the concluded state congresses and how the party plans to manage disagreements or face the risk of imposition and implosion. Thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon, Cletus.
Thanks for having me this afternoon on this hot topic.
Well, we saw an overwhelming trend of consensus candidates emerging from across the various states during these ward and state congresses. Does this not show a clear imposition by the state governors and party stakeholders? And does this consensus trend not stifle the emergence of fresh blood and younger leaders within your party?
Well, the outcry and the method and the prescribed mode of the congresses are both constitutional as in terms of the party and in terms of the Electoral Act. The options were clear. But the cry about imposition in some states is real. In others, it is the normal traditional complaints from those who lose out at moments like this. If you ask me whether there will be implosion, yes, it is a preparatory ground for implosion. I won't tell you that there will be no implosions. There will in some areas. What fits, for example, in Ondo State cannot fit in Cross River. And what fits in Benue State may not be the same thing that will happen in Plateau. So you are going to find in different states, different colors and different reactions to the various forms of infractions and dissatisfactions and discontent that cuts across the party strata. So what happened yesterday will definitely get to simmer down. And given that you are keeping a ruling party, the tendency for people to be easily placated and called to order is very high. It will not be the same as the fringe parties that are in the opposition, in which control and in which understanding will definitely be lacking, because those who should call the shots and those who should be respected are no longer going to be in a place and in a position to call anybody to order on account of their present condition and predicament. So for me, APC has the least problem about implosion. And those who are deluding themselves that there will be implosion are just going to deal with pockets of such resistance in some places. But it's not going to be as pervasive as it would have been if it was from the opposition. So clearly, there is little to worry about, because as you can see, there will be experienced personages within the party that were going to fix things up by moving from state to state, because there will be a reconciliation committee. There are going to also be leaders within the states that will call everybody to a round table and bring about reconciliation, because I keep insisting politics and in a democracy is like an elephant. Even the blind, even the disabled have a space. And this party, especially the APC, is the first political party in Nigeria that created space for inclusion of the weak and the strong, the able and the disabled, the physically challenged and otherwise, so that there is nothing like minority or majority, strong or weak. It is a matter of carrying everybody along. Yes, there will be disagreements. If there are no disagreements, then it's not a democracy. Disagreement do not amount to crisis. If there is no disagreement, everybody is quiet, then something is wrong. That will no longer be democracy. So what we are saying is to show and demonstrate that APC is organizing a robust exercise in which people, you are going to hear some parties do their primaries and congresses without anybody knowing that that ever took place. If that happens to APC, then it is a signal that something is wrong and that we are going down. Therefore, for me, this is a wake-up call to everybody to say, activities have started and kick-started, and you're going to get a lot of things. That is why, for example, you find that in the screening, as much as in the congresses themselves, Yes,
now,
please.
from everything you've said so far, some analysts will say that this is a clear evidence, that there's lack of internal democracy in the APC, because obviously from what you have said, there is selection of candidates, there's imposition of candidates, and then you talked about the fact that it will be easy to placate all those that are aggrieved because you are the ruling party. And at the same time, you also say that's democracy. Aren't you contradicting yourself?
I insist that if there are no disagreements in a democracy, then something is wrong.
But what about the imposition
there must be disagreement.
of candidates,
It is when
the selection and imposition of candidates? How democratic is that?
Let me tell you, what you are... When you say imposition of candidates, that is what I was defining for you and trying to explain to you and getting Nigerians understand. We've run parties. I've been state party chairman for 2 or 3 times, and I know what it means to get into these positions. There is nothing and nowhere you are going to take a decision that will not be opposed in a democracy. It is practically impossible. Therefore, what you are calling imposition is when a majority takes a position. There may be a few vocal, strong voices that are coming out to say, look, I was not consulted. Look, I was not contacted. I'm not carried along. A section and tendencies. For instance, the reality in APC is that those who just joined the party met members who are in the party on ground and are not giving them space. Those few persons must definitely have a right to complain and must be given a space to do so within the ambit of the constitution of the party. So to say that there is imposition is to misread the situation in which there are conflicts and disagreements about who should be what. There's no way you're going to get 3, 4 persons interested in a position, one gets it and the other 3 will not complain. It's not practicable. And that is democracy for you. But the majority will always have their way. The minority must have their say. So when they have their say and you call it imposition, it's a different matter. That does not mean that in some cases, indeed, there is imposition. I won't deny that. To say so is to pretend and to play the ostrich. I have seen that happen. I'm seeing what is happening in Benue, for example, in Ondo, for example. In Ondo, the difference is that members who have been in the party, the legacy members, as we call them, feel that they have not been consulted and not been taken along. While those who are joining because they are powerful and have been in power for over 17, 20 years are now making those who have been sitting in office and sitting in APC as ACN, ABGA, and others who came in as legacy parties are now being marginalized. They feel marginalized and are complaining that they should be integrated into the system. That, I said, can be handled by the leadership of the party at different levels, either at the zonal level or at the state level or at the local government levels. There are people now strong enough to be able to get their voices using their integrity and their experience and exposure to ensure that those disagreements are sorted out. But imposition, not imposition, but the fact of carrying along, of taking everybody into consideration in making decisions about who rules what, who gets what, should definitely be a thing that the party at the national level must set out to do. Because after this exercise, there must be what we call a Peace and Reconciliation Committee that goes around the state. And what I would recommend is that do not take people from the same area to go and reconcile people because they will never understand them. So if you are taking from the southeast, they should go to the northeast or northwest, while those from the northeast or northwest go to the south-south and things like that. In that way, there is a greater understanding. If you impose party officials and impose candidates, you cannot impose the votes. It is not possible to impose the votes. Therefore, people are going to be careful. There is no ballot box to carry. You are going to do electronic voting and electronic transmission and all that. So people now have their cards and their beavers are going to take the decision. So don't impose candidates, don't impose, because a preparation for imposition of candidates is imposition of party officials. If you impose votes, you cannot impose votes. Votes are going to belong to the people who are going to cast them. The individual members who have registered with INEC are the ones to vote. So if you impose candidates, impose party officials, you won't be able to impose the vote. So it is important that everybody is carried along. And then with direct voting, for example, now, instead of indirect primaries, what that means, every card-carrying member of a political party is going to vote for who the candidate is. And if that happens and you go and impose him, at the voting point at the polling unit, you won't be there to impose anything because there will be no such opportunity to do so. Okay. So I am calling on party officials and leaders at every level not to take anybody for granted.
And obviously, there are going to be some aggrieved members of the party, just like you discussed. And with the opposition looking to capitalize on any kind of missteps that the APC sees or any kind of implosions, do you foresee a wave of defections of those who have lost at the consensus table and, of course, those who you weren't able or the party wasn't able to placate?
Well, some who are extremely angry may want to defect, but I will please say this to them, which is what I have taken as a personal decision. You don't build a house, and because there are cockroaches and snakes and scorpions inside, you abandon the house. You either find a way of fumigating them out of the system or getting yourself positioned. It is not a good political decision. And I have made this point over and over, that political isolation is not a solution and cannot cure political apathy. If people start leaving party in the name of, because they felt that in a particular exercise they were not handled or they were not satisfied, you will keep running from party to party. Political migration is not indeed a virtue and can never yield any result that is positive. It waters down integrity and brings loyalty and trust to its infinite end. Therefore, it is not encouraging, and I will not encourage anybody to leave. Rather, sit back and absorb the heat and know how to navigate your way through it. But the opposition, expecting that the fall of APC is the rise of the opposition, is some banana peel that will never come to APC, because these are tested and trusted veterans in progressive politics. They are not going to get into that trap. In any case, why do you go into a 100 meters dash with the expectation that your opponent will slip and fall so that you can win? What kind of race is that? What kind of competition is that? It is a very defeatist approach. So go and find your best way to get in, but do not expect that APC will fall or APC will slip so that you come first in a race in which all of us are expected to show who is the strongest and the best. That does not mean that you shouldn't go out of your way to campaign and ensure that the opposition makes some errors. And those forced and unforced errors are going to determine how the 2027 election will end. And the primaries is the ultimate end of it. The quality of party officials translates to the quality of candidates, and good governance should be the result. Nigerians should expect that from APC, and we're going to be ready to deliver that.
Okay, very well said. Now, I'd like us to focus a bit on what happened in Benue State, where they had parallel congresses. Which factions' outcomes will be legitimized by the national body? And then also with what's happening in Ondo State, you know, where the party defied a court order and went ahead with to have their own congress, despite the fact that INEC was absent. How legal, how legitimate is that? Very briefly.
Now, let me say this to you. The courts have said they will not interfere, but where you yourself, you as a political party disobey your own constitution, the courts are invited to intervene. So in the case of Ondo, the courts are definitely going to intervene. And the party at the national level will definitely frown at this and take very strong exception to what is happening in Ondo State. In the case of Benue State, I can tell you that whoever is going to emerge, I am particularly an apostle of commitment and dedication. Taking undue advantage of situations and being ungrateful is something that and indeed anybody who has played the political game in a democracy will not accept. What is happening in Benue State especially is very regrettable, and I expect that the SGF will definitely take a very strong step, being a father of the house, to ensure that his house is not destroyed. Because when he joined the progressives as far back as 2007, 2006, he was not expecting that bringing in a priest is going to cause him this much of a problem. And being a reverend father, I'm sure that Father Alia himself will think twice, especially during this period of Lent, that reflecting on how he came into power, he should be more grateful and engage in more dialogue than these fisticuffs that are going on. Otherwise, we'll spill the table and destroy everything that we have built in Benue State. We've come a long way there, and I don't think we want to go back to Egypt.
Well, Cletus, Obun, thank you so much for your time here on Newsday.